Did you know that every year millions of animals such as dogs, cats, rats, mice, ferrets, hamsters, and monkeys experience physical and mental torture due to specific practices? Imagine a scientist testing an experiment on your pet that inflicts pain or permanent damage. How would that make you feel? Although some people believe the experiments on animals are necessary, many believe these experiments are cruel and outdated. Animal testing should be eliminated because it is cruel and inhumane. There are alternative testing methods, and animals differ from humans and make poor test subjects. The pain of animals have to face when being experimented on is cruel and inhumane. Animals used in experiments are commonly subjected to force feeding, forced inhalation, food and water deprivation, long periods of physical restraint, and infliction of burns and wounds. Not only do animals experience short-term suffering, but also severe long-term suffering. This suffering can include social isolation, repeated breeding and separating of infants from mothers, brain damage, and even death. In fact, 50% of animals being tested on die. Many of the animals die before the experiment is even completed. Even if the animals survive the experiments, they usually get killed right after the experiment is over. Many believe the tests being done are quick and painless. Since many experiments last days, if not weeks, you would expect the scientists to provide some sort of pain relief for the animals. However, the animals receive no anesthesia. Common painful tests include the Dre's eye test, which is used by cosmetic companies to evaluate irritation caused by shampoos and other products. It involves rabbits being incapacitated in stocks with their eyelids held open by clips, sometimes for multiple days so they cannot blink with the products being tested. Another test used is the LD50, lethal dose 50, test. Involves finding out which dose of the chemical will kill 50% of the animals being used on an experiment. All this information shows that animal testing is painful and harsh due to animals. Since we can now see the harm it does to animals, we can see why animals make poor test subjects. Animals do not make good test subjects for experiments. They differ greatly from humans. Their anatomic, metabolic, and cellular differences make animals poor models for human beings. Scientists state that it's very hard to create an animal model that even equates closely to what we're trying to achieve in a human. Thomas Harding, a professor of evidence-based toxicology at Johns Hopkins University, pushes for alternatives to animal testing because we are not 70-kilogram rats. Since animals differ so much from humans, many experiments have misled researchers into ignoring potential cures and treatments. 94% of products tested on animals fail human trials. Over 100 stroke drugs that were effective when tested on animals have failed human trials. Over 85 HIV vaccines have worked in animals but failed to work on humans. Not only are tests on animals usually ineffective, but also more expensive than other alternative tests. For experiments that analyze DNA, animal tests cost around $32,000, while in glass testing cost around $11,000. A skin test on rats cost around $11,500, while the non-animal equivalent costs only $1,500. The United States spends $14 billion per year on experiments on animals. We can now see how animals make poor test subjects and how expensive the experiments are. Now that we know the harm animal testing does, we can see other ways to experiment than on animals. There are many solutions to experimenting on animals. With new technology, there are many ways to test experiments and products that do not include animals. In-glass testing can produce more relevant results than animal testing because human cells can be used. This means studying cells in a petri dish. Microdosing, the administering of doses too small to cause adverse reactions, can be used in human volunteers whose blood is then analyzed. Artificial human skins, made from sheets of human skin cells grown in test tubes or plastic wells, can produce more useful results than testing chemicals on animal skin. Another alternate test in development includes microfluidic chips that are aligned with human cells to recreate the functions of human organs. New computer models can predict the toxicity of substances without the painful experiments on animals. Other computerized patient drug databases can create virtual drug trials to see how the drugs would work on humans. All this information shows that there are other ways to experiment on animals. Now we can see why experimenting on animals is a bad idea. As you can see, experimentation on animals does more harm than good for animals and humans. Animal testing is cruel and inhumane in the fact that it leads to infliction of pain and even death on animals. There are now more advanced testing methods that can be used as alternatives from testing on animals. Animals also differ greatly from humans and therefore make poor test subjects. When looking into experimentation on animals, there are more cons than pros. Animals have no choice in being tested on, so it isn't fair to them. It's the same as thinking of someone holding you captive and performing harsh experiments on you, and you had no say in the matter. Would that be fair?